Friday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Browns with a day off. They are in Philadelphia getting ready for their second preseason game against the Eagles tomorrow, 1 o'clock kickoff in Philadelphia. Isaiah Bond, a wide receiver from Texas that went undrafted because sexual assault charges were filed against him. So all the teams kind of let that go and didn't draft him. Well, yesterday, Texas issued a no bill, the prosecutors did. That means they don't have enough evidence to feel like they can get a conviction in the prosecution of it, so his charges have been released. They're null and void. They're not going to pursue it. Isaiah Bond is telling folks that he is getting excited to sign with the Cleveland Browns. Adam Schefter tweeting that out. But no deal has been finalized per sources. Bond went on to thank Jimmy Haslam and the Browns organization and Andrew Berry for giving him a second chance. Andrew Siciliano, Browns play-by-play host of Inside Coverage on Yahoo Sports, talking about Bond and the reports that he was signing with the Browns.
He was basically a top 50 to top 100, depending on whose rankings you look at before the draft. Wide receiver coming out of Texas, started at Alabama, and then went to UT. Obviously, Matthew Golden went in the first round from that wide receiver room at Texas. He went to the Green Bay Packers. Isaiah Bond wasn't drafted, however, because in early April, there was a sexual assault allegation against him in Texas. He sued, claiming defamation. That got thrown out. Fast forward to today, Isaiah Bond without a football team, and prosecutors in Texas, Charles, back to your no bill thing, issued a no bill, meaning we've decided to not pursue this case further because we do not believe that we could prosecute this case and get a conviction before a jury. So, no bill, Isaiah Bond basically cleared, free now of his legal issues. Isaiah Bond shortly thereafter posted on Instagram and on Twitter that he would like to thank Jimmy Haslam, owner of the Cleveland Browns, and that he is going to sign with the Browns. He's not signing with the Browns today. That is not going to happen. Mary Kay Cabot, beat writer, cleveland.com, used to be known as the Plain Dealer, reports tonight that the Browns have done due diligence. They certainly liked him as a football player coming out of the draft, and when you run a 4-3 or whatever, and you make big plays for the Texas Longhorns, certainly you're going to like him. However, don't believe what Isaiah Bond is selling right now. Mary Kay Cabot says that while the Browns have certainly looked into it, they are not signing him today.
And Bond is a guy that runs a 4.39, 5'11", 180 pounds. We'll have more on him a little bit later in the show. Dalton Wasserman from PFF, who hosts the college football show for PFF, will talk about Bond and what he can bring. NFL Films' Greg Cosell, guy studies more film than anybody, with his thoughts on Shedeur Sanders' preseason debut after looking at his tape.
Yeah, I thought there was more good than bad. I mean, I thought the second touchdown to Davis was his best play of the game because you saw the pocket movement. You saw him come, in a sense, through the pocket movement, go to a secondary or third receiver. It was a progression read. I love the fact on that play that he reset his throwing platform, meaning he reset his feet. He did not throw the ball off balance. And the way quarterbacks are taught is when you're throwing the ball closer to the front of the end zone, you throw it low. At the back of the end zone, you throw it high. So he threw the ball low. So that was a really beautiful play in all respects. He had some good throws. They kept it basic for him early on. One read, quick game throws. He missed a few where the throw was there and he looked at it and he just, for whatever reason, didn't see it the right way. I think if he were to play, and again, it's one preseason game, and that's all I'm responding to, by the way. I don't want people to think I'm defining his career. We have no idea what the future holds. But I think that his processing would have to become quicker if he were to play in an NFL game. But, overall, there was more good than bad.
And that's, well, you can say that about a lot of NFL rookies. Processing has to become quicker. That is something, the longer you're in a system, the longer you understand the system, it works. So we'll see. Rookie quarterback Dillon Gabriel is trying to come back from a hamstring injury. Would be the starter if he is ruled good to go tomorrow against the Eagles. Game time decision is what we're hearing. Radio analyst Nathan Zagura on the status for Dillon Gabriel.
I think it's a real game time decision. I talked to, Coach Stefanski last night. for the Kevin Stefanski show, and it's going to be a game time decision. I think that if he can go, they will be thrilled with that. They want him to go, obviously, so they can continue to evaluate these young quarterbacks. If he is unable to go, it's going to be Tyler Huntley. It's going to be the Tyler Huntley show. And it's obviously something were to happen to Huntley, I think Dillon Gabriel will go in and it will be a string of handoffs, because if they don't feel like he's well enough to start, they're not going to expose him to anything in the game. So I think it's a big one. I think it's rare that you have a big game time decision in a preseason game, but this is a pretty big game time decision. And I think everybody wants to see Dillon Gabriel get his first snaps.
And again, you're not going to risk Joe Flacco in a preseason game, so I understand completely what Nathan Zagur is talking about. Garrett Bush, Dalton Wasserman will be along a little bit later to talk Browns. Let's turn our attention to the Guardians. Guardians trying to take the series that was tied at 1 game apiece with the Miami Marlins. Game 3 last night at Progressive Field. Tanner Bybee gets the start against Edward Cabrera for the Marlins. In the first, Jose Ramirez, an RBI single to make it 3-1 Marlins, as the Marlins got 3 in the first. In the 5th, Kyle Manzardo, RBI single. That knots the game up at 4-all. 7th inning, David Fry comes through with an RBI single. 7-4 Guardians. Still in the 7th, Guardians trying to tack on a couple and put this one away. Brian Rocchio, an RBI single, 8-4. Guardians win it 9-4. The Yankees didn't play last night, so the Guardians now just a half game behind the Yankees for that 3rd and final wild card spot. Guardians open up a 3-game weekend series with the Atlanta Braves at Progressive Field. Joey Cantillo takes the mound for the Guardians. Hurston Waldrop, rookie, will be on the mound for the Braves. Garrett Bush up first. We're talking Browns on Sports for CLE. High school football starts next Friday. Friday Night Huddle on Rock Entertainment Sports is the place to go for all the scores and highlights from across Ohio. Join legendary head coach Chuck Kyle and I on Friday Night Huddle from 9:30 to 10:30 every Friday night on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. We'll take your phone calls, have all the scores and highlights. Join us Friday night for Friday Night Huddle, 9:30 on Rock Entertainment Sports Network. Head to watch rockentertainmentsports.com. That's watch entertainment rocksportsnetwork.com for channel information and program information.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day, put a little flag in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports for CLE. Word came out yesterday afternoon that Broward County in Florida will not pursue the case against Browns' second-round draft pick Quinshon Judkins due to a lack of evidence. He had the sexual battery, domestic violence claim against him. Lack of evidence, so they will not pursue that legally in Florida. The NFL hasn't commented yet on what their plan is moving forward. Keep in mind, Judkins is the only draft pick in the entire NFL that has yet to sign with his team, and the NFL's investigation is independent of anything legally and can still come down and suspend him. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi with what the next steps are for Judkins and the Browns.
I think they get him in camp as soon as possible. He has the advantage over Isaiah Bond in that he's been at OTAs, he's been at minicamp. Yeah, he's familiar with what they want to do. I think they will be careful not to rush him in. You know, physically is the question with him now, is what kind of shape has he been in, and get him on the field to get hit a couple, get his body hardened and reconditioned for football. So if they get him signed, when they get back to Berea, I doubt that we'd see him in the Rams game, the final game, but he'd be on his way to to being on the field within the first month of the season.
Let's welcome in G. Bush from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, as well as the Barbershop. G. Bush, that's kind of putting the cart ahead of the horse. The NFL still has to weigh in here.
Yeah, we've learned. It seems like we've been in this. We've talked about these things a lot before. You know, the NFL is different from you know, the legal system. So the NFL is going to look at it. They're going to apply their conduct policy to it. And then they're going to go about delivering their decision on whether or not he's going to probably get a suspension or not. So we go back and look at Mike Hall Jr. last year. His charges were dropped in his case. I think he still served a 5-game suspension. The league has already come out and say that they're already looking at Quinshon Judkins' case as well. And they've also said they're coming out and looking at, you know, Bond's case as well. You know, they're looking at that. So, you know, there's a couple of tracks that this thing goes down. The legal situation is kind of behind them. It's yet to be seen what it is with the league. I do think that they'll probably move to sign him. I think they will get a contract done, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see him on the football field anytime, you know, relatively quickly. It's not like he, you know, the case is dropped and he's going to play tomorrow or something. There's still some stuff that he needs to get ironed out, and the league needs to figure out whether or not they're going to take some disciplinary actions or not.
Yeah, and he hadn't been in camp or any of that, so he's, you know, he has not been able to concentrate on football. All right, Brian Baldinger, former NFL offensive lineman, what he saw from the Browns' joint practices against the Eagles.
It's like the Joe Flacco show out there. You know, he's got his 5 kids, he's got his wife out there, so he's got the family. But, I mean, he's taken a lot of reps, probably 2/3 of the reps over the last 2 days against the Eagles, and he said he needed to work. So he got to work. Dillon Gabriel came in, made some fine throws in the red zone. He was the one that was substituting with them. But it's probably the 2 guys you're going to see for the majority of the game Saturday night. On the other side, you know, they worked 2 fields the whole day. So, you know, offense, defense over here, Browns over here. And so I thought the Browns defense, especially in the red zone, really showed up. I thought they gave Jalen Hurts some problems. The way that they defended him, making him make some perfect throws, which was hard to do against that front, led by Myles Garrett, who had a pretty good afternoon out there.
Yeah, G. Bush, I don't think Joe Flacco's seen the field in Philadelphia. I think it's going to be Dillon Gabriel, Tyler Huntley, and, you know, they're hoping that Gabriel can go, you know, a half plus.
Yeah, listen, Nathan Zagura said it was I guess a game time decision. My hope is that you get out there and see Dillon Gabriel, because you know, this is something. To me, the worst nightmare is you got Dillon Gabriel, you got Kenny Pickett, and you don't get a chance to see either one of those guys due to injury during the whole preseason. Because what ends up happening is, like, what did we establish? We went in going talking about a quarterback competition, and we saw Shedeur Sanders play once. He's now injured. You saw Kenny Pickett in practice, but you haven't seen him in games. And now Dillon Gabriel still is up in the air a little bit. For me, you know, we talked about competition, and we talked about those guys going out there playing. Hopefully Dillon Gabriel can go. And if Dillon Gabriel is going, then Flacco is definitely not going to play in this game. So to me, you know, I look at it like this, and a lot of people go and do, you know, a lot of crazy stuff, and they say certain things, and they're like, oh, well, Joe Flacco, he needs to get these reps, and he needs to see it. And I'm like, listen, if Joe Flacco is going to be your starter, you are one move, one slight bump, a wrist, a hit helmet with his hand, to now you're dealing with, okay, Joe Flacco's out for a sustained period of time, and that might go into the regular season. And now you are playing a rookie week 1, or you are playing a Kenny Pickett who hasn't played. So that don't make no sense to me. Get him to work in the joint practices. But other than that, let's get to see some of these other dudes and see what they can do, so we can figure out what we got going after Joe Flacco. And
we'll talk a little bit about Dillon Gabriel next segment. But Mike Gafolo on the Shedeur Sanders oblique injury from NFL Network's The Insiders.
Shedeur Sanders not being able to play in this game Not the worst thing, right? I mean, I know he's disappointed. He's a competitor. He wants to beat out Lonzo. But not the worst thing because he already put some good tape out there with his performance in the preseason opener. We have talked about this. The competition was between him and Dillon Gabriel, really, for that third spot, it seemed like. I mean, maybe potentially for the second spot, but for the third spot, who's going to stay on the roster versus who could potentially be sneaked through waivers and onto the practice squad. The fact that that tape is out there now helps his case. Right? It helps that the other teams will be like, hey, you want to waive him? We're going to take it. So helps his case to be on the final roster there. Going to fight hard to get back out there and get back on the playing field sometime in the preseason here to see if he can get some work in at the end. But that oblique, Kevin Stefanski calling it day-to-day, Judy. We'll see when he can get back.
Yeah, G. Bush, I'm not buying the one of those rookies is going to go or Kenny. I think it's more likely they keep 4 quarterbacks and they'll figure it out in another position. But the only downside for Sanders is that was step 1. That was really good. Now he's got to wait to take step 2.
Yeah, I think he's, I think more than anything, it's just tamping down your excitement, right? Because he played well. You were like, man, let's see what he can do against the Eagles and run that back. You know what I mean? Let's see what he can do in another opportunity to see what he can get done, right? So, everybody was excited to see it. In this case, in this game, you're going to get to see an apples comparison with Dillon Gabriel probably playing a half, Shedeur Sanders getting the opportunity to play a half. So, everybody was excited about it. Now it's like, oh, man, we're not going to get a chance to see it. But look, this is football, you don't want to rush somebody back. If they're not ready to play. And it's not a thing. And I keep, and this thing is getting me as well. People have to get in their mind that just because traditionally people don't carry 4 quarterbacks does not mean that it's baffling that you have to say, oh my gosh, the Browns have 4 quarterbacks. Can you believe it? Listen, if it's between a quarterback and a guy running down on kickoff, the guy running down on kickoff is not, they're going to find somebody else. If you're at the Browns, the year they went to the playoffs, they used 5-6 quarterbacks.
Yep.
Especially if guys are banged up and you didn't get a proper evaluation to even see Pickett or Gabriel, and now Shedeur Sanders is injured. Joe Flacco is 40 plus. I don't know people who are 40 plus that make it through a whole 17-game season, whether it's through injuries or whether it's through the way they could play the game. It's just a situation where you got to definitely think about it and say, listen, man, we gonna have to keep these quarterbacks because that's the most important position, and we'll figure out if we need another guy to run down on the kickoff team.
Yes, it's really not that hard. And they had 4 quarterbacks start last year. You had Deshaun, you had Jameis, you had DTR, you had Bailey Zappi. So they've had 4 quarterbacks the last 2 years start. So don't sleep on them, keeping all 4 of them. You mentioned Nathan Zegura, radio analyst, Browns Radio Network, talking about what the Browns' identity has been so far.
More physical. The camp's been more physical. We've had the live tackling periods. They've gotten real good work into joint practices. They're more physical. I mean, I think that was the thing that you wanted to see against Philadelphia, who's got, arguably the best offensive line, defensive line combo in the NFL. They're the defending Super Bowl champs, and the Browns absolutely match their physicality. And I think when you're going to play the way the Browns are going to play this year, as we've talked about, with that defense, with the running game, you've got to be physical. And I think that was a real point of emphasis. You see the guys being physical, and it certainly has showed out on the field. So I would say this has been the most physical camp that we've had. It's been the most intense, and I think that is the character of this team. This is going to be a physical team, which is something that's always easy to root for, right? Because these guys are going to go out there, they are going to bring it, and we'll see how games go in terms of wins and losses. But this is going to be a team that's going to play very, very hard, and I think that physicality is going to carry over. I think that's something that in some of the camps in the past, maybe not as physical, and we came out early in the year last year, obviously against Dallas, and got blitzed a little bit. I think this team is going to hopefully, be ready to play and be ready for the physicality of a real NFL game.
Well, they better be, because the only way they're going to win is by beating people up front, because they don't have the skill. When you don't have the skill, you turn it into a fight in a phone booth.
Yeah, you got to muddy the waters. you gotta muddy it up. You gotta be physical. You gotta do things that other teams don't want to do. You gotta be annoying. You gotta be attention to detail. All of it goes hand in hand. If you wanna run the football, running the football goes with good defense. Running the football goes with, because here's the thing: if you're gonna limit possessions for yourself, you have to also limit the possessions that you have. You have to also get off the field on third downs. You also have to, on the other side, you don't have that many opportunities to put points on the board because you are limiting your own possessions by running the football. Now, on the other end, you can't give up big plays and one-play scores. You can't give up plays on third down. You got to make teams kick field goals. By the way, special teams counts with that too. Hey, are you punting? Are you nailing guys and you pinning guys deep? You can't miss extra points. You got to be able to hit field goals when you need points on the board, especially when you're playing young rookie quarterbacks or younger quarterbacks and you don't have the explosiveness of the offense to score quick. So it's complementary football. All those things go hand in hand. You can't be 1st and 15 for jumping off sides. You can't be having holding penalties that take away chunk plays off the board, which are very hard to come by. All of those things go into how you need to play. It puts a premium at your toughness. It puts a premium at the way you go about and approach a football game. You got to be smart. You got to be intelligent, and you got to be disciplined. So all those things play hand in hand. It's just not being physical and running the football. It's your mindset of saying, oh, yeah, I messed up on that one. It's 15 yards. We'll get it back. No. Or, hey, yeah, I know I was tired this play. I jumped off sides and gave them a free first down. No problem. Don't things happen. We'll get it back. No, that ain't it.
Yep.
You don't have the talent to say, oh, that was just something that happened. We can cover up for it. It don't work that way. So I think those other things are part of what the Browns need to also do to kind of transform themselves to get into a way they think they need to win games.
Yep, and I'd say physicality is probably number one, both sides of the line. Number two, don't turn the damn ball over. If you're limiting possessions, turnovers cost you twice as much. I'm with you. Who are some of the guys that have flashed for you through the joint practice in the first preseason game?
Well, listen, by all accounts, the guy that, obviously, there's the two guys that we already know about. Myles Garrett has not been blockable. He asked the Philadelphia Eagles. He was the best guy on the football field against them in joint practices. He's been dominant. Denzel Ward looks great. Denzel Ward has been locking up everything moving. He had a nice breakup on Devontae Smith. And you look at the Browns defensive line. The Browns defensive line really won that day. Mason Graham has flashed in his own way. Carson Schlesinger has, all he did is go out and put a number of tackles on the board. We've talked about him on this show a lot about what he brings to the table and how he moves with it. There's also guys that I thought Shedeur Sanders actually flashed a little bit.
Yep.
We talked about how we would have liked to see him get his opportunity to come back and bring that back again. But in the joint practices, I like what Joe Flacco did and being efficient and he had a crossing route touchdown to Jamari Thrash in the team drills and the team practices. So I thought some of the guys who you want to lead you are out there, but you've also seen some good things from the rookie class in Schlesinger and Mason Graham.
Yeah, I'm with you. And relative to Myles Garrett, only people that have been able to stop him in the preseason have been the Strongsville Police.
That's it. They're undefeated.
G. Bush and I
They're elite. They are elite.
Strongsville Police 2, Browns nothing if you're keeping score in the preseason. G. Bush and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Garrett Bush from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show and the Barbershop. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Seeing what I've seen with Shador and the offense, just what does this offense look like since it's not centered on one person anymore? And I actually love the offense the way it is. I love the balanced approach of heavy run game, play action down the field. I think that's what suits us, and I think that's going to keep us in a lot of games this year. I think the addition of Tommy Reese helping Kevin Stefanski with this offense gives Kevin another creative person to really lean on. And just seeing how this offense has just evolved throughout the years, I'm just happy to get this offense back, happy to compete with teams that are just formidable this year. And, yeah, let's see where we go from there. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. G. Bush, the interesting thing, Tommy Reese is he's the reason that you have that motion, and they're not getting as many penalties, so they're able to run the motion that they're trying to do. But he brings up an interesting point. They tried to build an offense around Deshaun Watson. I was all for it. Upon further review, a head coach that is an offensive coach should never try to build something around another player that is not his, because Kevin Stefanski and Jim Dorsey and anybody in that offensive room had no idea how to fix all of the problems they had last year.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I get where people come from, and I was for it as well. If you're going to spend that many resources on a player and that much time, energy, money, draft picks, whatever the case may be, we are naive to think that they're not going to try to move heaven and hell to get him to play well. That's just what's going to happen.
Yep.
And so one of the things that they're going to do is try to make him comfortable. But also, I just never felt as if it was a cohesive fit. It wasn't something that they was sitting together and it was organically put together where it was like, okay, wow, okay, these pieces come together. This is what he likes to run, but I really run that too. When you bring in Dorsey, it's like, okay, he's been running a certain type of system, and then Deshaun is used to a certain thing, and it just never really meshed or whatever the case may be. It just didn't. And one of the things was you took a team that didn't have the requisite pieces or parts to run that.
Yeah.
You want to run shotgun, but you ain't got receivers like that.
The line.
You ain't got a deep threat.
The line was the biggest.
Line.
That was the biggest mismatch.
I mean, guys are used to run blocking and power, and that's your best guys and the best trio of guys are in the middle of your line, and they're known for being maulers, and you having them drop back into pass sets 40 times a game. That's not their game. Screen game was gone. The running game was non-existent. There was no complementary play action off of that. It was a bad set. So now you get back to a point where you counting on everybody to carry their work. Offensive line, we got to run the football. Backs, we need to be consistent. We need to make guys miss. Receivers, we need timing on the routes. And when you have everybody that is expected to carry certain things and expected to carry their half, then or their portion of it, now it's not all on one person to be like, oh, we're waiting on Deshaun Watson to take us to the promised land by doing things that other people aren't comfortable with. So I think that's the thing people are more excited about, per se. Now, don't get it twisted. Some people are that good. Joe Burrow's that good. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, those guys are that good. Patrick Mahomes, where they could just say, this is what I'm going to do, and we're going to build it around him. And one day, maybe the Cleveland Browns may get to a point where they find a franchise quarterback and they say, yeah, we're going to just build it around what he does best. But if you don't have that, you got to be balanced, you got to be disciplined, and you got to play complementary football. It seems like that's the buzzword of today. But when you don't have a per se quarterback and you don't have somebody that you're spoon feeding in the run game or the pass game, you're gonna have to do it cohesively.
Yeah, and one more thought about the offensive line. It's not like these guys were second or third year guys. These are guys that are kicking 30 and some of them over 30, and you're asking them to do things they don't do. The more I think about it, it's like, well, no wonder that failed. All right, let's move on. Dillon Gabriel, if he's healthy, and we've heard it's a game-time decision with him, he'll get the start against the Eagles. Former Steelers defensive back Bryant McFadden, what he's looking for out of Gabriel.
I want to see a command of the huddle. I want to see Dillon Gabriel, act as if he belongs in the National Football League. And this is his first opportunity. And similar to what we saw with Shedeur Sanders last week, and just showing that he belonged and making nice plays and being able to move the chains to put your offense in scoring opportunities and score touchdowns. That's what I want to see from Dillon Gabriel. When he got drafted in the 3rd round because of his skill set and how well he played throughout his collegiate career. Most importantly, recently with the Oregon Ducks. So now I want to see some of that same efficiency happen for Dillon Gabriel, not just as an individual, but just the command of the entire offense. Because what we saw last week, it was almost starting to feel like, no question, Shedeur Sanders was gaining traction and moving from that 4th spot on the depth chart, potentially could move in front of Dillon Gabriel. Now, because of the injury and Shedeur is not playing, Dillon Gabriel has to take advantage of his opportunity. He has to put forth some really, really good tape to kind of keep this thing status quo in terms of how the depth chart is currently looking as we see it coming from Cleveland.
In the depth chart, it doesn't come into play here. But what I will say is it's the same thing that I want to see from Dillon Gabriel that I wanted to see from Shedeur Sanders. I don't want to see penalties. I don't want to see him getting out of the huddle. I do want to see him able. Can you throw downfield? The height is a question. I as a small guy, I don't like the fact, but I want to see it. It does. Can he play at that size with these guys? That's a question. And if you don't think it is, you're just not being realistic.
Yeah, listen, he is just as much as Shedeur Sanders has to prove. He has to prove. Because just like Shedeur Sanders winning around, people thought he wasn't supposed to go in. Dillon Gabriel winning around, people thought he wasn't supposed to go in. If you ask me, and who has played better in the preseason, it has been Shedeur Sanders. I thought he played better. I think he's made more throws. I think he's been more accurate. But Dillon has received a lot of first-team reps. He's received a lot of playing time, and now the Cleveland Browns have been on record. People have been saying how they like him. They love his intelligence. They think that he's a guy that has been in a lot of different places and in a lot of different schemes, and he's more acclimated than people may think to playing a quarterback at this level. But it all boiled down to you got to see it. That's what it boiled down to. It boiled down to show me.
Yep.
So, just like it was with Shedeur Sanders, it was show me. It's the same thing with Kenny Pickett. It's show me. Let me see what you got. Because yeah, we can hear all the other stuff, but the way we judge and the way we gauge what you can do is by the play. Everything else is secondary to that. The primary thing is, can you drop back, get to your 5th, 3rd, or 5th or 7th step drop, deliver the ball on time with accuracy, anticipation, and continually do that consistently through the day, drives throughout the game to get your team points. We need to see it. It's kind of important for a quarterback to do that. So, yeah, like this is the fact that we have to explain that is crazy. It's like, yeah, we kind of have to see it, man, especially when you're a quarterback who has certain physical limitations, right?
Yep.
If you don't have a strong arm, people are going to want to prove that to you. Hey, you want to say, hey, look, can you throw the ball in November in Cleveland outside? They want to see it. We've asked that question of Colt McCoy. We've asked that question of a lot of people. So, yeah, that's something we want to see. Hopefully he gets to start. And by the way, he gets an opportunity to prove that. So I'm happy for him, his first start, if he does make it. And I'll be interested to see what the outcome is.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, lights are on. And now this is what we want to see. And I'm with you. I'm not rooting for one or the other. I want them both to do well. I want all those quarterbacks to show they can play. Because we have not had quarterback play in an orange helmet in a while. Right.
I look at it, and when you look at Dillon Gabriel, I want to see the competition level because I do think it's important. I think it's important not only just for the fans, but these guys need to win over the guys that are on their team. These guys need to win over the locker room. They need to win over the people that actually matter, and it counts. And you want people to get behind you and show that, hey, I earned this position, and the locker room knows that if I go out on that football field, I'm going to be able to put them in the best position to win some games and to have some success. So it's important to get a taste of that, to see who you are and what you stand for. So to me, it'd be disappointing if we couldn't see Dillon Gabriel today, because that means we're going to have to see Tyler Huntley for an entire game And that is not what we were sold on. We were not sold on the Tyler Huntley program for a whole game when we got three other guys we want to be in the quarterback battle.
Yep, I'm with you. G. Bush, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight.
You.
Thanks very much. Garrett Bush, make sure you check him out Monday through Friday, 11 to 1, Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Weekends, check him out on the Barbershop. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Dalton Wasserman from PFF, straight ahead. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Browns radio analyst Nathan Zagura on the key factors to success for the 2025 Browns.
It's going to come down to that defensive line that has traveled so far from Berea to Charlotte to Philadelphia, that continues in the regular season. You're going to have to be able to run the ball, and obviously there was news yesterday that makes it certainly seem like it is going to be very possible to see Quinshon Judkins in a Browns uniform soon, and I think he'll be a big part of their ability to run the ball. And then you mentioned it, Joe Flacco, take care of the football, but hit those shot plays when they're there off of that hard play action. And so that's the recipe for the Cleveland Browns. I think, Joe Flacco, and I think a lot of the starters, not all, but I think a lot of the starters, Kevin Stefanski told me last night that you will see them in the preseason finale. So that is a change in how, he's operated the preseason. I think we'll get a little bit of a dress rehearsal for the starters early in that game against the Rams.
And again, he's talking about Kevin Stefanski playing the starters, something he hasn't done in preseasons past. Let's welcome in Dalton Wasserman, PFF data analyst, co-host of the Pro Football College Football Show. Dalton, the line, when you go to Philadelphia and you hear the line held up, that's a good sign. That's high expectations for Philadelphia, and we know the expectations are not nearly as high for the Browns by and large.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a Browns team that has to win with their offensive and defensive lines. Offensively, we saw last year with all the injuries that they had, no matter who was playing quarterback, they just couldn't protect them. They couldn't open holes in the run game. And, like was mentioned there, if Quinshon Judkins is going to sign now and be available at the start of the season, you've got a decent trio of running backs to work with in the run game. And then defensively, the defensive line and Myles Garrett and that unit, that's the heart and soul of this football team, right? That's really the one unit on this team that opponents fear, that Garrett can get after him, that Mason Graham can get after it on the inside after being taken top 5 overall. Guys like Isaiah McGuire also up front. So this is a team that has to win in the trenches. And certainly when you talk about going toe-to-toe with the best trench team in football on both sides in Philadelphia, that is a very good sign.
Yeah, and again, it's, the concern is the age and the health. So we'll see how that line plays. It's better than the alternative, which would be that they got pushed around, which happened last year. They didn't get pushed around in the joint practices like they did. We talked a little bit and told you a little bit about Isaiah Bond earlier in the show. Charles Robinson of Yahoo Sports, Andrew Siciliano, talking about the news with Bond saying that he was going to sign with the Cleveland Browns and thanking the owner, Jimmy Haslam.
Maybe the player jumped the gun here. Regardless, he is talented. Somebody will sign him. Charles, it might be the Browns, but right now they're pushing back against that.
Well, Andrew, who's the offensive coordinator of the Browns, right? There's a connection there. So, I think there's no doubt that he would like to play, for the Browns. And frankly, you could argue there's a need for the Browns. I think the Browns could use depth at wide receiver. And as you said, he was a player who, I think there were varying opinions on him in the draft, but I feel like his basement in the draft was a 3rd round pick, right? And there were certainly teams that I think would have liked to have taken a look at him maybe later in the 2nd round. A guy who's got speed, not a ton of size. In terms of height, he's like a 5'11" guy, but he does have that 4.4 sub 4.4 speed, which is that'll get you a lot of shots in the NFL, and that will definitely drive you up draft boards. Played big roles at 2 programs when you talk about Alabama and Texas. So I think for him, this is frankly the best possible outcome of this, right? I mean, to have fallen out of the draft when you could have been, I think, again, the basement on you was really a third-round assessment. To have fallen completely out of the draft is rare. And I think in those instances, it causes particularly maybe some teams that haven't done their full due diligence, but I think all kind of knew what was at the table at that point, causes everybody to sit there and go, okay, this is really serious.
And, Dalton, it's kind of interesting. I didn't connect Tommy Rees from Alabama, where he played, to Bond. So the Browns should have a little bit of background on him that some teams might not.
Yeah, certainly. And the fun football side of that is I would say that 2023 season that he played under Tommy Rees at Alabama was his best season. What Isaiah Bond brings is a deep threat with blazing speed, 4.3 speed, maybe even 4.2 speed, like his Texas teammate Matthew Golden, who was a first-round pick of the Green Bay Packers. But last year, he got off to a pretty good start at Texas, and then obviously there was Quinn Ewers' injury. There was some inconsistency at quarterback with that and trying to throw the ball deep. So he kind of fell out of favor as Golden got hot the second half of the season. But Bond is talented, and for a Browns team that is looking for a vertical threat, they're hoping Cedric Tillman can be one of those guys. Jerry Jeudy did a really nice job working underneath last year, but there's an element of this offense vertically and a lack of speed last year that you saw. They just couldn't hit those deep shots. Now, part of that is the quarterback situation. Part of that is the poor pass protection, but part of it is also a lack of speed. So it's interesting now to see, with Bond seemingly cleared of all his off-field troubles, if he is signing with Cleveland, if that's getting finalized, that they finally maybe have a vertical threat, at least somebody who could give them that level of speed to take safeties off the top of the defense.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the highlights from Bond. 5'11", 180, not a huge guy, but you can see the speed, the burst, and the acceleration. Was with Texas last year. We mentioned a couple of years with Alabama before that. You see they use him in the red zone a lot as well. The gadget play, that's like something Kevin Stefanski loves trying to do. Let's see if Bond has the ability to run those jet sweeps. But here's what you like. As they say, you can't coach 4-2, 4-3, and there's a lot of acceleration and some moves in the open field. When you take a look at his scouting report, this is from NFL, they grade him as an eventual plus starter above a 6. I think it was a 6.39 was his grade. Comparison is Jalen Waddle. All right, you kind of like that. Another Alabama wide receiver. High school sprint, state champ, top-end speed, hips and agility, snap routes off tightly and separate. You saw some of that. Natural hands, willingness to catch in traffic. Weaknesses, with all those skill set, just 99 catches in 3 seasons. Speed variance, so it's starting and stopping and route running, and he can become overwhelmed by size when contested. The weaknesses are only going to be magnified a little bit in the NFL, especially the size. When you look at him, slot, outside, what do you see with Bond? What's the best way to use him?
I think he's a guy that's not going to get a super high volume of targets. I think it's a good thing to point that out as the first weakness there, because he's a guy who at times, and we've seen receivers like this throughout the league for years and years, that it's kind of home run or strikeout with him, right? He might be a guy that has 3 catches for 120 yards because he's hit 2 bombs, and you really go, wow, he's really made these game-changing plays in a flash, right? He can do that on any play with his speed, but also there are weeks where he disappears, right? The lack of physicality to get off press coverage. You mentioned he's only 180 pounds. I think that's something he struggles with. So I think you're going to see opposing defenses challenge him in press coverage when he does get on the field. And then more details in the route running, right? I think there's times where he snaps off and it looks really smooth. And then there's other times where you go, okay, why is this guy so fast, but he doesn't always separate the way you want him to? What he is you think about just one of those low volume, high efficiency targets that when he's hitting those deep balls, it's really good. I think the comp to Jalen Waddle might be a little bit high because I think Waddle's better after the catch than Bond is, but certainly the speed is the biggest factor in his game, and the ability to hit home runs deep down the field. If the Browns can get him the ball, is something that's where he would affect the game the most, is deep down the field.
All right, along those lines, CBS Sports Mike Renner, CBS Sports HQ, the position battle he's watching for the Browns against the Eagles in the second preseason game.
I want to look at the guys that either Shador or Gabriel or Flacco are going to be throwing to this year, because we all know Jerry Jeudy. We all know David Njoku. We all may not know who the third guy there is. It's Cedric Tillman, who was a third rounder a few years ago, was banged up a little last year, only 339 yards. Or it could be Jamari Thrash, who was a fifth rounder in 2024. That's been a pleasant surprise throughout the offseason and training camp. Or it could be their third round tight end in Harold Fannin out of Bowling Green, a guy who led all of college football in receiving yards last year. And if you know Kevin Stefanski, he loves his two tight end sets. So I'm looking for who just is going to shine in that role of that third pass catcher, because right now with just Jeudy and Njoku, that ain't enough weapons to compete in today's NFL.
Well, and Dalton, that would be why you look at an Isaiah Bond. The one guy he didn't mention was Deontay Johnson, who, I mean, he had a couple of really good day, or a really good day in joint practices and not as good the second day. But that's a guy that has flashed some early on, is Deontay Johnson. And it's a former All-Pro. Now, you got to make sure his head's on straight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Johnson, it would be really nice to have him as a veteran presence who can win and separate underneath in some of those, say, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 situations. If he can be productive, that changes the outlook of it. And then the two guys that Renner mentioned there, I think are really important, are Cedric Tillman, who, when Jameis Winston was in at quarterback last year, he showed us in a couple of games that he can be one of those vertical threats. And then I'm really intrigued also with the Bowling Green tight end, the 3rd-round pick, Harold Fannin Jr., because the volume that he's gotten there the last 2 years, the athleticism that he shows you with the ball in his hands, the ability to break tackles and make things happen after the catch, his ability in the screen game. I do think, Cleveland was one of the ideal places for that second tight end role that Harold Fannin could play. I think it's a really good spot for him next to David Njoku, who's a little more traditional. Stefanski can move Fannin around more, and I think he's just a guy that takes some of those easier throws and makes productive plays for you in your offense. I think I comped him a lot like a Jonnu Smith in the same role that he played for the Miami Dolphins last year. Now he'll be in Pittsburgh playing against the Browns twice this year. But I think Fannin and Tillman are the two young guys that I really look at that the Browns could use to step up.
All right, before we go to break, Nathan Zagura, Browns radio analyst, what he saw yesterday, day 2 of joint practices for the Browns and Eagles.
All the people who covered the Eagles said that the Browns got the best of them. And I think the real theme of those 2 days of those joint practices was that the Browns' defensive line was dominant, game-wrecking. I know Landon Dickerson wasn't out there. Lane Johnson was out there the first day, was not out there the second day. But, Miles is going against Jordan Mailata, who's an elite left tackle. I was joking on Twitter when I said he had 20 sacks, exaggerating, but it got to the point where he was just pulling up and putting his hands out because he would have wrecked the practice himself. And it wasn't just him. You could go up and down that D-line. Malik Collins had multiple plays in the backfield. Mason Graham had multiple plays in the backfield. Alex Wright, Isaiah McGuire, Cam Thomas, Aiden Huntington. That's the guy I think people need to keep an eye on Saturday. Number 66 had 4 special teams tackles last week, also had a sack. And I'm telling you, the Browns like him. And so, that defensive line, though, just top to bottom, I think was the real story. And then offensively, the Eagles' defense, I think probably over the sum of the 2 days got the better of the Browns' offense. But Joe Flacco really got it going towards the end of yesterday's session. There was a sequence where he hit Jerry Jeudy on a deep post who broke away from Quinshon Mitchell. That was definitely a touchdown. Then he throws a touchdown to David Njoku. Then they get the 2-point conversion. And so they were starting to hum a little bit. And that was certainly very, very fun to see.
And again, Dalton, it's joint practices. They are the ones. We won't see them much. Probably not even in the 3rd preseason game. We'll see some. So it's a good sign. I wouldn't say it means, it's not guaranteed success, but you would rather have them do that than hear, man, they got overwhelmed by the defending Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, you're right, Dave. It's certainly always better to have a good practice than a bad one, that's for sure. But it's good to see, look, any team that you look at, no matter how many wins you expect them to have in any given season, you look at their strengths and you look at what kind of problems they can cause. And by far the first one when you're playing against the Cleveland Browns is this defensive line. It's Myles Garrett and that crew. And for a team like Philadelphia, for a player like Jordan Mailata, who was our highest graded tackle in the league last year, to say things like that about the Browns defensive line, it just shows you that if your offensive line on on the other side isn't ready to buckle up and play football for 60 minutes, they can really hurt you. The Browns can hurt you. When you talk about even teams like Cincinnati, everybody thinks the Bengals are better than the Browns, but for years and years, the Browns have given them problems because of Myles Garrett and that crew up front, right? You think about teams on their schedule like Miami, like New England, like even Pittsburgh twice this year. If they have issues up front with their offensive lines, they're going to play Cleveland and not have an easy time because of Garrett and Graham and those guys up front. So it's always a good sign the earlier that a unit like that can get rolling. If they carry that into the season, then their defense will be a problem for a lot of teams that they play.
Dalton Wasserman from PFF and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about a position battle to keep an eye on with the Browns and strengths for the Browns 2025 roster. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Dalton Wasserman from PFF. Bryant McFadden, former Steelers defensive back, on the position battle he's watching for the Browns against the Eagles.
For me, I transitioned to the defensive side because of the season-ending injury to Martin Emerson Jr., who was a nice partner in crime when you look at what they have in Denzel Ward at the top two cornerback positions for their secondary. Now it's kind of shaking up things a little bit. Greg Newsome, who was the nickel guy, he moved outside, and now Cameron Mitchell, third-year player from Northwestern, is now moving inside. But Kevin Stefanski has already mentioned that he's going to kind of mix up things a little bit to see exactly what gives them the best opportunity to be at their best in the secondary. Because when you look at what Martin Emerson was doing, you didn't question who CB2 was for their defense. And then with his ability to play sound football, it kept Greg Newsome inside. Now Greg Newsome will be an outside guy, and just trying to find that mixture of the next best two guys outside of Denzel Ward is very, very important for this defense. So just seeing how that, plays out throughout the preseason, I think is very, very important.
And again, Dalton, Greg Newsome did play outside. Before they drafted Emerson, they kicked him inside. Reluctant. Cameron Mitchell has struggled a little bit. Miles Harden is a guy who you're starting to hear a little bit about as far as flashing at that position.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Harden was a hard-hitting physical player in college that I really liked watching, and I think you've got guys like him. You've got the veteran Nick Needham, who was signed from the Dolphins. You've got Tony Brown. I think this open cornerback position, I think you're probably going to see a rotation, especially if you're talking about the slot throughout the season. And I think opponents are going to attack it early and often. They attacked the Browns cornerbacks early and often last season. And the one thing I'm curious on is Jim Schwartz going to adjust, because they played as much man coverage as any team in the league last year. Is he going to feel like he has to play it a little bit safer, maybe sit back in more zones this year? Obviously, Ward is one of the best in the business, but Newsome also had his career worst season by our grading last year. So it's a position where all of a sudden you're lacking depth very quickly. They were lacking depth anyway, but now when one of your three starters gets hurt, it becomes an even bigger problem. So this open competition for that, that nickel spot, or if they're going to move Newsome back and forth, or however they're going to do that, it's going to be really important for this defense, because right now I still think it's probably the weakest part of their defense is the depth at cornerback.
So you wrote an article, your previews, NFL preview, Cleveland Browns. The biggest strength you had is the defensive line. I don't know that anybody would question that. They've got young guys that aren't as well known that look like they're ready to take a step into the spotlight.
Yeah, absolutely. One guy that I look at is the edge defender who played really well the second half of last year. That's Isaiah McGuire. He had one of the best run defense grades in the league for us, which is obviously so important. Obviously, you want every defensive end to be a great pass rusher, but you already have the best one on the planet, Myles Garrett, right? So if the rest of the defensive line, McGuire, even Mason Graham on the inside, he was the highest graded defensive tackle in college last year in run defense. If those guys can stop the run, and you don't have that option all the time of running on the Browns to avoid those obvious pass passing situations, that's when you allow Myles Garrett to really do his work, and then those other guys can contribute there too. But this defensive line is far and away the best unit on this team.
So biggest weakness, you had quarterback spotlight Joe Flacco, and then offensive player spotlight Jerry Jeudy. The pairing of Jeudy and Flacco, it could be pretty good.
I think it makes a lot of sense when you look at the success that Jeudy had, especially in some of the base concepts in Stefanski's offense, in those intermediate throws, a lot of those crossing routes that Flacco came in a couple years ago in that run to the playoffs. He was very, very comfortable making those throws, play action, getting under center, running that play action concepts, getting things horizontal, working across the field. And Jeudy, look, he came over last year and he established himself as the clear top target on this team. Just got an insane amount of volume because really there was just nobody else proven aside from David Njoku, obviously at tight end, but at wide receiver, he's the one proven consistent option right now. It feels like he really needs to be their best offensive player again this year and maybe take another step forward.
Defensively, obviously, Myles Garrett, the defense player spotlight. Rookie to watch, Mason Graham. And you have best bet, Cedric Tillman, over 675.5 yards. Let's talk a little bit about Graham. We talked a little bit about Garrett, and we've got superlatives for him, but we'll just. What have you seen from Graham?
I mean, honestly, look, for the last 3 years at Michigan, he was the best defensive tackle in college football. He's active. He's super quick for his size. He's very versatile in pass rush situations. He can do things very much like Chris Jones, where you can align him anywhere on the line of scrimmage. If it's outside off the edge, if it's inside, over the center. I've even seen times, even at 320 pounds, where he's standing up on 2 feet and he's a stand-up edge rusher. Mason Graham can do a little bit of everything. There's some concerns about his lack of arm length and his ability, maybe sometimes with a shorter, stockier build to take on double teams, but his quickness and his athleticism, there are times I watch him, it should not be possible for him to move the way he does at 320 pounds. He's an active player, and with Garrett taking a lot of double teams, if Graham is going to get a ton of one-on-ones, I really like his chances to succeed in the NFL very soon.
What do you think about Tillman? That's a guy that, you saw him a little bit, and he was starting to really look like he was getting ready to break out with Jameis Winston, and then he misses a bunch of games with concussion.
Yeah, look, I mean, you saw it with Winston. If Tillman has an ability with a vertical passer like Jameis Winston to get downfield and get opportunities downfield, look, he's a size speed guy, right? A lot of those guys from Tennessee are. He's a size speed guy that you hope to get 4, 5, 6 vertical targets per week, but those are big-time explosive plays, right? Again, I don't think, even like Isaiah Bond, same way, I don't think Tillman will ever be a super high-volume target that he sees the ball 10, 12 times in a game and you base your whole offense around, but as a vertical threat who can threaten safeties downfield and 3 or 4 times a game make a big play, that's a guy who's got that sort of potential across 17 games. And again, the Browns are lacking for a second clear option at wide receiver right now. If he becomes that guy, I think that's his role, is to be the deep threat to open everything else up for Jeudy and for these tight ends.
So the defensive line, we talked about it. That's the unit that you watch on this one. They fared pretty well in joint practice against the Eagles, Panthers as well. At what point do you start thinking, well, they might be able to kind of make this unit top 10, top 5 in the NFL? What do you need to see from this defense?
We got to see how that cornerback situation plays out like we did earlier. And then, boy, I would love to see Quinshon Judkins continue to play the way he did in that first preseason game. Played 13 snaps and 6, I believe he made 6 tackles in 12 or 13 snaps. And I think he was their highest graded player for us that night, either first or second on the defense. Quinshon Judkins, look, I thought it might take more time, and obviously he's a rookie and he's still going to hit some bumps, but he was fantastic in that first preseason game. If he can really emerge as a starting caliber player immediately, especially after Jordan Hicks' retirement, that's another thing I have questions about, is all of a sudden they're very young at linebacker, but Judkins, first pick of the second round, they feel like he can be a difference maker. He looked like it in a short stint last week against Carolina. Let's see him continue to do that, and then we might start talking really big things about this defense.
All right, before I let you go, Dillon Gabriel, game-time decision. If he is healthy, he will start at quarterback and probably play a half, maybe a little bit more. What would be good things? What do you need to see from him? And I'll also ask you, if you saw this, it would concern you with Dillon Gabriel.
I think the good things you're going to see from him. He's going to get rid of the ball on time, and a lot of times in college, he was very good at pushing the ball outside the numbers. He was comfortable with perimeter throws. What you want to see in this offense is two things. One, how comfortable is he at his size, and he just didn't do it as much in college. How comfortable is he throwing over the middle of the field? That's really an area where Stefanski wants to get back to attacking. And the other thing for me that I thought was one of his biggest weaknesses anytime I've watched Gabriel is down in the red zone, right? We saw Shedeur Sanders twice last week with his 2 touchdowns play really, really well in the red zone, make some tight window throws down there. That's one of the things Gabriel I've seen struggle with during his time at UCF, Oklahoma, Oregon, even back when I watched him at the Senior Bowl down in Mobile. Really, really good between the 20s a lot of times, and then things just start to stall in the red zone. I want to see that performance if he can work the Browns down into the red zone and see if he can make those tight window throws like Shedeur did last week.
Dalton Wasserman, Pro Football Focus, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Dalton.
Appreciate you as always, Dave. Thank you.
Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus. Make sure you check him out. Always really good, insightful stuff. Is also the co-host of the PFF College Football Show. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. Preseason game tomorrow at 1 o'clock against the Eagles. We'll talk about it Monday at 4 here on Sports for CLE. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.